Welcome everyone to our virtual event centered around the topic of AP versus IB. We are so glad you're here with us today, and we are very pleased to engage with you in this very important discussion. My name is Dr. J.P. Rader. I am the director at the International Community School, and I'm happy to be able to introduce to you two outstanding members of our academic team for today's talks. Mr. Daryl Harding is our middle school and high school principal and comes to ICS with decades of experience in both the IB and AP programs. Mr. Eric Lau is our academic counselor and has a passion for supporting our high school students to get to the next level of their education. For the live Q&A sessions, our Director of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Kara Stuckey, will also be ready to answer any questions you may have about our curriculum. Our elementary principal, Mr. Lance Kirshner, will also outline the students' pathway from elementary school all the way to our AP programs and the skills they will gain along the way. As you can see from who is present today, our entire admin team is committed to facing these issues head on and answering the questions you might have. We are thankful for your partnership in the education of your children. We are going to share our presentations in just a moment, and the live Q&A segment will begin after each speaker's presentation. Submit your questions to anyone on the panel by sending a message to panel questions. So let's get started.
Hello everyone. Thank you for considering the International Community School in Singapore as a place of learning for your child. My name is Daryl Harding, and I'm the middle school and high school principal here at ICS. Over the course of the first few months here at ICS, I have been consistently asked the same questions and heard the same comments about the differences between what ICS offers, the Advanced Placement, or AP, and what many other schools offer, the International Baccalaureate, or the IB. Both students and parents want to know which program is better, which program offers the best chance to enter into universities and colleges around the globe. To be perfectly honest, it's not an easy question to answer. To compare the two programs is, as we say, an apples to oranges comparison. There are advantages and disadvantages to each program, and what you need to gather is as much information about them as possible in order to make an informed decision that leads you towards meeting your goals and the goals of your child. Furthermore, in my 20 years of international education, the one thing I've heard over and over again is that top-tier universities and colleges around the world care far less about whether or not you've attended an IB or an AP school, and are more concerned with that you've challenged yourself in your program, done active, innovative, service-oriented items outside of the classroom. From 2009 to 2020, I worked in two different IB schools. Beginning as an IB math teacher and eventually working in school leadership as a coordinator and an assistant principal, I have a hands-on understanding of what the IB is all about. In addition to the work I did in my own schools, I also served with the IB office as a school evaluator, a teacher trainer, and a school consultant. I've evaluated schools, led workshops, and conducted consultancies all over the world, growing an in-depth understanding of the IB and how it works in a variety of schools and contexts. Even though I no longer work for the IB, I still see value in its philosophy of education, in the students I've taught, and in my own children. It would be wrong of me to speak of the IB poorly, in order to gain students at our own school. The truth of the matter is, the IB has a lot of great things going for it. However, so does the AP. Before beginning the IB journey in 2009, I worked in an AP school for 3 years. Now that I find myself back in an AP school, I am consistently reflecting on what the key differences are, and if one is truly better than the other. Of course, if you ask someone who works for the IB, they will tell you most certainly that the IB is the best. I'm sure that the same would be said by someone at the College Board about the AP. Those that work in these programs have a biased view. As educators, I would like to think that we do not. To be very honest, I want what's best for the student. And I believe that both the IB and the AB can meet the needs of each and every student. When I was considering changing schools back in 2017, I was consistently asked by colleagues if I would ever consider working in a non-IB school. My response to them was always yes. This was because I believed, and still believe today, that good teaching and learning is good teaching and learning, regardless of the program that supports it. In my classroom visits, the countless classroom visits, I can tell you here at ICS, good teaching and learning is most certainly happening. Like I said, the IB and AP are very different programs, and in order for you to understand the choice between the two, you need to understand the key differences as well as how they can support your future endeavors. Later, our college counselor will share with you how the AP and our overall curriculum here at ICS can help your child meet the entrance requirements for universities and colleges all over the world. You'll find that you are not disadvantaged here in any way by taking the AP. But let me share some general information with you about the two programs first, and put to rest any myths that may be out there. Even back when I was deeply involved with the IB, I would be asked a question about how it is different from the AP. This was especially true in Korea, where, like here, many of our students desired to go to colleges and universities in the United States. In that circumstance, parents there were concerned that the IB would not be adequately preparing their students for acceptance and success in post-secondary education in the United States. It's interesting to me that I now find myself on the other side of the debate. While the majority of our students here do want to go to college and university in the United States, that trend is changing. You'll find and you will hear from our college coordinator how we have been successful in ensuring that our students can enter post-secondary schools all over the world. The fact is, the thinking that either program will offer you an advantage over the other for particular countries and their colleges and universities is dated and a result of a lack of complete understanding. And that's our goal here today, to help you understand both programs and how you can make a decision based on not half-truths, but facts. A decision that is in the best interest of students. When asked how the IB and AP differ, I often use the analogy of going to a restaurant and having to choose between a set menu or the a la carte menu. In general, the IB would be the set menu. The program is 2 years long. Students are required to take 6 subjects, 3 of them from the higher level. And outside of these 6 subjects, students have to take Theory of Knowledge, or TOK, complete a service component, CAS, and a research essay, the extended essay. Now, as you can see, while these choices within the subject groupings, literature, language, humanities, science, and math exist, the requirements to get the diploma are quite rigid. The contrast here for us is that the AP offers greater flexibility. With the AP, you can focus on your course load that interests you and lie within your strengths. What you want to study in college and university makes a difference. If engineering at MIT is where you want to study, then AP classes in math and the sciences would benefit you most. In the AP, these can be taken without the extra challenges or burdens of AP classes in language, language arts, humanities, for example. It is probably here where one of the first myths originate, that the IB is more rigorous or harder than the AP. Yes, the IB requires that you do more, but it's up to non-IB schools to set their graduation requirements so that students are appropriately challenged within a rigorous course load that will adequately prepare them for college and university. While IB schools are restricted by the requirements of the IB, AP schools have the responsibility to ensure that they offer a program of excellence. You will see differences in AP schools that you will not see in IB schools because of this. And the truth is, some AP schools do not go beyond the general education that's necessary for true development of students. This is not the case here at ICS. In order to graduate from ICS, students must go above and beyond the normal credit requirements to graduate. Like the IB, we have our own service component, which is ongoing throughout the year, culminating with our Week Without Walls. Like the IB, we have a senior thesis, a research essay that all students must complete in their senior year. And finally, our Bible classes not only offer students a chance to grow ethically and morally, but to answer questions in a critical and creative way through communicating research findings and their meaning, much like the TOK. Another unique aspect of the IB is the learner profile attributes, as well as the approaches to teaching and learning skills that's central to what IB schools believe. That learning is far more than just attaining knowledge, and that there is a need for a balance of learning and moral characteristics, as well as a skills development to go along with that knowledge. No one is going to argue that this is not accurate nor important. And it is true that some non-IB schools, like those offering the American curriculum, are more likely to focus on rote learning, facts, than anything else. This again goes back to the flexibility that schools have when offering the AP. However, this is not what you're going to experience here at ICS. ICS's expected student outcomes and our use of standards-based teaching and learning ensure that we take students beyond rote learning and towards developing those 21st century learning skills that they will need in order to be successful. As a Christian school, we develop students with high moral standards and values who want to have an impact on the world around them. As a community, this is who we are and what we do. It is a balanced approach that is intentionally designed to reflect research best practices to ensure that our students have every opportunity to succeed in life as those from any other program, including the IB. I would like to finish by saying that this is just a small portion of the vast amount of information out there on both the IB and AP programs. I could not possibly cover everything here in such a short time. However, I can assure you that everyone here at ICS will be more than willing to talk about this in greater depth if you wish. I encourage you to set up a time through our office in order to further our conversations. For now, I will turn things over to a brief time of Q&A. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Another warm welcome to our AP versus IB event. My name is Sarah Go, and I am the Director of Advancement. I will be moderating the Q&A sessions with our panelists, Mr. Harding, Mr. Lau, Dr. Rader, and Ms. Stuckey. Now let's welcome Mr. Harding, who will begin answering your questions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us this evening. And as I mentioned in the video, my name is Daryl Harding, and I'm the middle school and high school principal here at ICS. As promised, we've been fielding your questions, and we're going to take some time to answer them for you right now. So let's take it away, Sarah.
So first question, this is a good one. Are there stats that show differences in academic success in college given the two different tracks?
Yeah, there's all sorts of numbers out there, and it's really dependent on the source that is giving you those numbers. In my time in the IB, we would hear little snippets from one-off students about their success and feeling prepared to go off to university in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, in the UK, and so on and so forth. The same types of numbers that come out of universities in those same countries about the AP. It really depends on the student and what they've done and in those schools to actually make sure they further their own studies. The numbers that you will see, you need to take with a grain of salt, I would say, because the numbers are being produced by the IB are obviously going to favor the IB, and the numbers produced by the College Board are obviously going to be in favor of the College Board. So I would suggest if you see any sorts of numbers that you reach out to us and ask us questions specifically about those numbers and that data.
And the next question, is AP curriculum recognized worldwide outside of the USA?
Absolutely, yes. We've actually done quite a bit of work that you'll hear about from Mr. Lau later on in the presentation about the schools that do recognize the AP and have specific entrance requirements for students coming from AP schools with respect to their AP classes, the types of classes that they need to take, the scores that they need to get in those AP courses, their SAT scores, and any language requirements that might be needed depending on the country that they're going to. There is going to be data you will see from Singapore, from Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, the UK, Australia, and many other countries from outside of the United States.
Good one. And how do we ensure we stand equal, if not better, chances in entering non-US universities?
I think my best advice is the moment you step foot into ICS, you set up an appointment with Mr. Lau and myself, and you ask that very question. He's got a mountain of information, data that he's pulled from other schools and universities around the world that lays it out pretty systematically for you as to which courses you need to take for which program, the scores you need to get, any other types of standardized testing you need to have, the scores you need to receive there, and even it goes as far as to say whether you need interviews, whether you need TOEFL, TOEIC, CELTA, or any other sorts of other recognitions for language requirements and such.
Thank you. Dr. Rader, there's a few questions for you. From your experience teaching AP and IB courses, which program prepares the students more effectively for college?
Yes, thank you. I had actually the very unique experience of teaching both an AP course and IB course simultaneously for about 10 years at Seoul Foreign School as I was teaching history. And so I saw it from saw it up close, the rigor that was there. And really the answer to the question is that both are extremely difficult, they're challenging, and they demand that you have a high level of skills in order to succeed. So in writing, thinking, speaking, collaboration, those are all going to be necessary to be able to succeed in both programs. And therefore, they do both prepare you for university. I really, most of the anecdotal things that came back to me over the years from students were supporting the fact that they felt very, very prepared as they went to university.
Thank you, Dr. Rader. And
Yep.
back to you, Mr. Harding. Can you expand on what you mean by AP schools have more flexibility and how that impacts the perception that the AP is easier?
Yeah, having worked in IB schools, the IB actually has an accreditation similar to our WASC and ACSI accreditation. The College Board doesn't do that. So we apply to offer our AP classes, and we have to submit our syllabus and our textbooks and the standards we will be assessing and so on and so forth, so that we meet the requirements of the AP in terms of the topics and rigor. But the College Board will not come on our campus and make sure that we're doing things exactly the way it's outlined in the policies and procedures that they have. The IB does. And the IB sets forth, if you want an IB diploma, you must do 6 courses with 3 at the higher level. You must do the extended essay. You must do TOK. You must do all of these sorts of requirements. The AP doesn't say that you need to do 6 AP classes. It doesn't say that you need to do a certain number of arts classes. That's up to us as a school. And so some schools can take the easy path and not have the graduation requirements that other rigorous schools have. Some schools you will see that will not offer a lot of choices in the AP. And therefore, the perception is that, well, they're just doing whatever it is they want to do, whatever WASC tells them to do, or whatever Mid-States Association or whatever accreditation that they are working through, whatever they want them to do, they just meet the minimum requirement. That's not happening here. And you'll see from Mr. Lau that there will be a lot of information about the number of AP classes that you should take to go to Hong Kong or to Australia or into the UK. And you'll also see that the requirements are quite high, and we set the students up for that. So Mr. Lau meets with all of our students toward the end of grade 8, beginning of grade 9, and makes sure that he sets up a 4-year plan for the student to graduate, but not only graduate, to graduate with the best opportunity to get into the university that they so desire. It's up to the student to get the grade. Mr. Lau and I, the teachers, we can't do anything to force the kid to study harder and to really put the work in, but we set them up in terms of the 4-year plan for success.
Another question, can ICS graduates be admitted to UK universities?
That's a great question. Absolutely, yes. Later on in the presentation, you're going to hear from an ICS graduate who is currently at King's College in London. So that'll give you a great hands-on example of a student just last year that's now in the UK.
And a parent has heard that the IB is more dependent on a process/curriculum, which is very standardized. But AP is more dependent on a teacher/school. Do you think it's true?
No, not necessarily. I think both programs are dependent on the teacher and the school. Yes, there are processes and curriculum that come along that's mandated by the IB, especially in the diploma program. But you know, I've done probably 25 visits all over the world for IB schools. And you could go to some what you think by name and by stature are great schools who have not so great teachers, and it's not going very well, and the results show that. And the same thing can happen in the AP schools. So I think, you know, I said in my presentation, good teaching and learning is good teaching and learning. You could have a fantastic curriculum. If your teachers aren't up to it, the school and the students will not be successful. You could have a poor curriculum, and if you've got some fantastic teachers, I've seen some fantastic teachers, you know, make gold out of stones for curriculum.
And what if we are not sure yet of where our child will go to university or which course they will take? Is there a general curriculum that can be used as a guide?
Yeah, Mr. Lau, he is the expert on that one for you. He can set things up so that you've got a very broad chances to get into a great array of universities. And as you move further down towards grade 10, 11, and 12, you can start to hone in on where it is specifically you want to go. Because the AP requires a great deal of skill and independence, you don't see a whole lot of students taking a lot of AP classes early on. Generally, some 9th graders will take one, and even that's pretty rare. You may see 1 or 2 being taken in 10th grade, but the majority of our students take, and the students worldwide, take the AP classes in their 11th grade year. You'll see students take 2, 3, sometimes 4 AP classes in their 11th grade year, and perhaps pick up another couple in 12. So it gives them a couple years to kind of figure things out, and the way the 4-year plan can be set up, it can be fairly general in the first couple of years and become more specific in grades 11 and 12.
And the last question for you, can a student following AP join IP at a later stage, say grade 9 or 10?
Yeah, I think so. There will be gaps, just the same as if it was going the other way around, particularly in the maths and the sciences. And that's more to do with the school rather than the program. A lot of IB schools tend to offer the modular sciences or the integrated sciences where there's no chemistry or physics or biology that's independent, but it is science, grade 9 science, grade 10 science. And then, so you go in having studied, for example, in grade 9 at ICS, you studied biology, and in grade 10, you studied chemistry, but perhaps you didn't study physics. And so there'll be little pieces of physics missing that you may notice in grade 11 and 12. Now, perhaps that student doesn't choose to do IB physics, and you may never notice it. Math is basically the same, where we tend to go with a more segmented type math course where we have geometry completely separate from our algebra, which is completely separate from our probability and statistics. Whereas most IB schools will tend to run that in an integrated way, where they'll see a little bit of each of the topics of mathematics over the course of the 5 years of what's in the IB is called the MYP. So you may see gaps coming in where we haven't done a lot of statistics and probability, which comes generally in 11th grade. But students who have gone through the IB and are continuing in the diploma program may not have the statistics and probability gaps. Conversely, our students would come in with stronger algebra skills than those students who have the stronger statistics and probability skills. So there's a bit of give and take that happens there.
Thank you, Mr. Harding and Dr. Rader. Now, due to the
welcome.
encouraging number of parents and guardians joining from the elementary school division, I am happy to welcome Mr. Lance Kirshner, who will be sharing a bit more about the pathway to AP from the elementary division. Mr. Kirshner?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Go. And I want to thank all of the parents for your participation tonight. It's great to see that we have so many elementary school parents that have joined us. So what I'd like to talk about is the pathway from elementary school to AP. Mr. Harding has given us an excellent presentation comparing the IB program with the AP program. If you're an elementary school parent, thinking about which program might be right for your child, in many ways that seems quite far off in the future. And we've actually gotten some feedback from some of our parents in our parent surveys that they would like to see a clearer pathway. What does it look like to go from elementary school all the way through to an advanced high school course like an AP course here at ICS? So what I'd like to do is actually take you on that journey with us with some real world examples so that you can see from a practical standpoint what this might look like. So we'll use one specific example. I could give you, this is one example among many, many examples that I could show you, but I'd like to use an example of K-5 science and some skills and concepts that are learned there, and then take you all the way through to AP physics. So hopefully this will be very informative for you, help you to see how these skills build on one another, how these concepts build on one another, from our little guys all the way down in our early childhood program in K-5, all the way through to AP physics. So let's start with K-5. So what I'll do is show you some examples of some investigations or some labs that take place in these different grade levels. I'll describe a little bit of the activity that the kids do in the investigation, but what I'd like you to really focus on are the words highlighted in red on the slides. These are the specific skills that students are learning and practicing as they dig into these investigations. So in K-5, there is a unit on forces and interactions. And so one of the investigations that our K-5 students do is a kickball investigation. So what they're experimenting with is learning how applying different amounts of force to an object can actually change the direction as well as the velocity, the acceleration, the speed of the object, and also the mass of the object. They're also experimenting with that, trying different types of balls and seeing how different forces, smaller or greater forces acting upon balls with different masses actually can change the direction as well as the speed of the ball. But look at some of the skills that they're learning and practicing: predicting, analyzing, experimenting, and comparing. This is at a K-5 level. Now, taking that and with the skills that they learned there and those concepts, let's jump up to grade 3. Also, there's a unit in grade 3 about forces and interactions. So one of the experiments that the students do first is a pendulum experiment, where they actually use a pendulum and they have to predict based on the mass, the weight or the mass of the pendulum, the starting point of the pendulum, the ending point of the pendulum, how many times the pendulum will swing back and forth within a given period of time. So they, in that experiment, they have to analyze, predict, graph, write, and they have to make a claim using supporting evidence. And then once they have done that experiment, then they use what they've learned from their pendulum experiment to then do an investigation that's called the crooked swing investigation. So they're given a swing, a small swing that you can see in the pictures here, and initially the swing is crooked, and they have to problem solve in order to correct the swing so that the swing actually moves back and forth in a consistent motion rather than an inconsistent motion. So in that investigation, what they're learning about, they're applying what they have learned previously in previous grade levels about forces and interactions, to analyze, problem solve, create, experiment, design, label, and also then explain their design. So these are very high level thinking skills that they're learning and practicing at grade 3. Now taking those, let's jump up to grade 5. In grade 5, they're digging into forces in motion, and they're also experimenting with matter. So this actually gets a bit into chemistry as well as forces in motion. But and this, one of the activities that they do there is a chemical cars investigation. They're actually doing this today outside on our back walkway. And the idea here is to create a chemical car using a chemical reaction. The goal is to create the right type of chemical reaction that will produce enough force to propel the car forward a distance of at least 1 meter. So in this investigation, they're using what they have learned previously about forces in motion in previous grade levels. They're building on that, putting some chemistry in as well to plan, to analyze, to measure, experiment, problem solve, as well as create. You'll notice that a lot of these same skills, a lot of these same verbs that we're using to describe the skills that they're learning and practicing are happening over and over and over again at a higher level each grade up. So now let's take this idea, let's move it up to grade 8. So first, forces in motion, we're going to stick with that idea in our force and motion engineering internship, which is one of the grade 8 units that happens in grade 8 science. So in this investigation, it's a ball velocity lab investigation. So what the students are doing here is using a ball of varying mass, and they're using an apparatus that actually exerts a force on the ball to propel it forward. And that apparatus can be adjusted so they can actually change the amount of force that's applied on the ball. So think back all the way to that that K5 example that I gave you with kickball. Now we're ratcheting that up to grade 8, because in this, they're having to predict what the velocity of the ball will be based on the force that is applied to it. They're having to calculate and actually measure that. You'll see a student in the picture on the right who has a stopwatch. So this student is actually timing how long it takes the ball to travel from one point to another, and they're measuring that and then using that to actually calculate the speed of the ball and problem solve at the same time. So you can see year by year by year how these skills are building and building and building. Now let's take, like I said, we're going to start from K5 and we're going to end up at AP Physics. So let's go ahead and jump to AP Physics. So this is an investigation that happens in AP Physics. So in AP Physics, these students are applying Newton's second law. All right, so just to kind of give you a brief, if you're not a physics person, it's the force equals mass times acceleration, that there's a proportion of the mass of an object and the acceleration of that object is proportional to the force that's applied upon it. So they're doing in this investigation a cart and a pulley lab investigation. So what the students are actually doing is using a cart. They're creating this, designing and creating this cart apparatus that's on a pulley system. They have to measure the mass of the cart, and then they have to first calculate what, using Newton's second law, what the speed of the cart will be based on how far it travels in a certain amount of time. And then they actually time that, they actually measure it themselves, and then they compare those things. And so you can see the students working on that here in the picture, and then on the right-hand side, you can actually see the calculations that the students have done. So they're using many of the same skills that they learned all the way back in K5, measuring, analyzing, calculating, comparing, but they're doing it at a very high level. So I hope that taking you on this pathway has helped you to get a better idea, especially if you're an elementary school parent or maybe a middle school parent, the journey that your child can actually take as they learn these skills and these concepts and practice them at higher and higher levels each year, that to move them all the way from a K5 science playing kickball and investigating that all the way to AP Physics. So that is hopefully very informative for you. I want to thank you for, again, for your participation. And at this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it back over to Mrs. Go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kirshner. That was so informative that there were not any questions for you. So if you do have any questions that you think of later, please email them to Mr. Kirshner at esprincipal@ics.edu.sg. So at this time, I would love to introduce to you our academic counselor, Mr. Eric Lau, to begin the next presentation.
Hello everyone, and thank you again for joining us to learn more about how ICS prepares your students for the future. My name is Eric Lau, and I'm the high school counselor at ICS. It is my privilege to share with you how we prepare our students at ICS to have a competitive edge when it comes to applying for admissions to some of the top universities globally. How does ICS prepare students for admissions into some of the top universities? Along with our general course offerings, ICS offers 3 key components in the student's high school career. They are advanced placement and honors courses, Week Without Walls, and the honors senior thesis. Let me take a few minutes to describe each component. Let's start with advanced placement and honors courses. ICS offers 7 honors courses and 14 APs, which students take on campus, with an additional 8 APs offered online in partnership with North Star Academy. AP courses give students an edge in university because it will prepare them for the high-level learning and coursework. And as you will see later on in the presentation, AP courses also play an important part of university applications. The next component is the honors senior thesis, which is the student's capstone research project in their final year at ICS. The senior thesis will develop the student's critical thinking, research and presentation skills, as well as academic writing skills. This is a great addition to their college application as the student is able to use this experience in their essays. Finally, at ICS, we have our service learning component called Week Without Walls. The aim for Week Without Walls is to cultivate a general attitude of service that motivates students to learn new skills, interact with new people, and understand their world both where they live and in the world at large. In addition to the 3 key components that ICS offers to support students to have a competitive edge in the college application process, students also have the opportunity to explore a range of extracurricular activities on and off campus. They are able to challenge themselves during the school year and holidays to take advantage of internships, leadership courses, volunteerism, and other opportunities to enhance their academic and personal growth and diversify their experiences. Another support that we provide our students is offering the practice SAT, or more commonly known as the PSAT, in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. The PSAT prepares them for the SAT, which is the standardized test widely used for college admissions throughout the world. What does the college and university admissions support look like at ICS? Well, because we're a small high school community, ICS students are provided a unique opportunity to be able to have personalized college and career plans created for them beginning in grade 9 so that they are successful in their university applications. We provide support and resources for our students to explore university courses and majors, as well as to research the prerequisites needed for university admissions. With this information, we assist students in choosing the classes they will take at ICS, which will include AP and honors courses to provide a rigorous course schedule. The coursework at ICS will help prepare students for the SAT, which they usually sit for the 2nd semester of their junior year. Finally, students must take ownership of their learning at ICS. They must take initiative and be responsible to get what they need to be successful. It is important for each student to meet with their high school counselor in order for personalized support, advising and accountability as they work together for their success after ICS. These are just a few key components that we offer our students in order to prepare them to be a competitor in some of the top schools worldwide. Now let's take a few minutes and look at some of the countries that our students have matriculated to and their general admission considerations coming from an AP school. I will not go into great detail for the admissions requirements, but instead give you a broad overview. Also, the universities that you will see on this screen are 3 of the top universities in each country. So let's start with Australia. The most important piece that Australian universities are looking for in an application is the SAT or ACT score. When considering applying to Australian universities, a student must know what course of study they want to do because each course has a different SAT, ACT score that is required. Next is Canada. The most important factor in their admissions process is the student's senior year grades in core subjects, which are English, mathematics, science, and social studies. In Canada, each province has different requirements in admissions, so it's important to research what is required for admissions to each individual university and the province they're located in. Now let's move to countries in Asia and begin with Hong Kong. The most important factor for admissions to Hong Kong universities is standardized test scores. Prospective students must score well on the SAT, ACT, AP test, and/or SAT subject test. One component to general admissions for Hong Kong universities is that some will require students to be proficient in English and in a second language as well. Next is Japan. Like Hong Kong, Japan universities focus on SAT and GPA when it comes to admissions. If you are a Japanese citizen and have been living and studying outside of Japan, you might be considered a returnee, which may have different admission requirements. You will want to check with each school you are applying to see if you are considered a returnee applicant. Let's move on to the next country, which is Singapore. Singapore universities also weigh the students' standardized test scores heavily in the admissions process. One of the best options that Singapore universities offer to students who must serve in national service is that they will defer the student's acceptance for 2 years while the student serves. Many countries do not offer 2-year deferments once being accepted. Finally, our last country in Asia is South Korea. South Korea has one of the most complicated application processes, which may change year by year. Once again, standardized test scores are the most important factor for South Korean universities. If you are considered an overseas Korean, it is important to know what admission track you fall into. There are 3 different admission tracks for overseas Koreans. It is very important that your student applies to the correct track and visits the university's website to read through their admission guidelines. The last country I will highlight is the United Kingdom. The most important part of the admission process is the student's AP exam scores. UK universities like to see the student successfully complete 3 AP exams. It is important for your student to gain practical experience through volunteering, internships, or other activities related to their interest as well. There is so much more information that I could share about the application process and requirements for each country. This is just a snapshot to show you that ICS's academic program prepares students to have a competitive edge in the application process for universities all over the world. Finally, I would like to leave you with just one of many stories of how ICS prepared one of our graduates to matriculate into King's College in London. I have asked her if I could share her story, and with her permission, I would like to introduce you to Carissa Gonzalez, an ICS graduate of the class of 2019, currently pursuing a BA in History at King's College. This is what she has to say of her experience at ICS. She says, "My time at ICS molded me to become the best version of myself and a student that universities actively sought to accept. Starting from my freshman year, I was encouraged to think beyond only the year ahead, but to start planning a comprehensive path that included the courses I would need to graduate, the subjects I might be interested in, and most of all, how I envisioned myself as a young adult after ICS. Most memorably, when I wanted to take more niche AP classes that ICS could not logistically host, they endeavored to find me a suitable online provider and assisted with the resources I would need to excel. The emphasis on becoming critical thinkers and cultivating proficient research skills prepared me for the expectations of a world-ranking British university and mentoring under highly regarded professors. I'm grateful to be brought up in a school that is dedicated to producing students that thrive in every aspect of their life." End quote. Well, I hope that one day in the near future, I will have the opportunity to work with your student to achieve what they thought could not be possible and have a story like Chris's to share with others. I will now pass on the time to you all for a time of questions and answers with our amazing middle school and high school leadership team. Thank you.
Mr. Eric Lau, please introduce yourself to our lovely audience.
Thank you, Mrs. Go. Well, hello everyone, and thank you again for joining us at our virtual open house. As mentioned in the video, my name is Eric Lau, and I am the high school counselor here at ICS. I work directly with grades 9 to 12. We have been taking note of your questions, and so I'm happy to answer some of them. So Mrs. Go, what is our first question?
The first question is, how many AP courses does university in US require?
Yeah, that's a very good question. the number of AP courses that US universities require will be, it will vary between the universities that your students will apply to. A general rule of thumb, in order to position themselves in a good standing to be a competitive applicant, would be to at least take AP courses for core subjects such as math, science, social studies, and English, as well as looking into grade 11 and 12 for your student to begin to take AP courses related to the field that they want to study. So if they want to, let's say, study psychology, we would then recommend them to pursue AP psychology. If they're looking more engineering, then taking, for example, an AP chemistry, AP physics, and even AP calculus. So it just varies towards grade 11 and 12 which AP courses to take.
And do students who have graduated from ICS who are non-US citizens, are they required to take TOEFL to enter US universities?
That's a great question. Some universities will exempt students who hold a passport whose first language is not English because they have studied at a 4-year high school all in English. However, some universities will require the student to take an English proficiency test. And so that would just depend on the university, which we would need to definitely look into and make sure that we know for that specific one for the student.
And I know you mentioned about some AP courses just now, but what are the AP subjects offered in ICS?
Oh, wow. Okay, you're going to test my memory. So this year we have AP Biology, AP Calculus, AP Physics 1, and AP Physics C. We have AP Psychology, AP Mandarin. We have AP Art, which is 2D, and ooh, that's 7. What's the 8th one?
I'm sure they can look it up in the college high school catalog on the website.
Yes, that's a very good place to look for it. And we do offer in rotation AP classes as well. So this year, AP Chemistry wasn't offered, but it will be offered next year. So we do a rotation.
All right, Dr. Raider, there's a question for you. In your experience at various schools in Asia, how have your students been able to gain acceptances at top tier schools? Is there a formula?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that there really isn't necessarily a formula. I think that the key thing is that that college counselors and evaluators are looking at students holistically. There are some things that they do focus on in terms of some general qualities that they're looking for. They definitely want consistency. They want excellence in the work that's being produced. They also want the students to be taking the most rigorous classes. So if you're in an AP school like ICS, you need to be taking as many AP classes as possible, particularly in the area that you're looking to major in at the university. The other thing is they are looking for leadership skills. Not only are you on the team, are you in a leadership position in that, whether it's a team or a club or music or whatever, or drama, are you displaying leadership qualities? The other thing is persistence. A lot of people that I've talked to at universities have talked about the students and how they persist. For instance, if they start a sport in the 10th grade, are they finishing it as a senior as opposed to pulling out? So I think these are all factors in the process. There's not a complete formula. I think at the very top tier schools, you do need to be doing things that will pull you away from the crowd in a sense, and really think outside the box in terms of the types of activities that you're going to be involved in and be a part of.
And a follow-up question, Dr. Raider, to that is, in your experience, which program AP or IB gives the students a better chance to access a top tier university?
I actually think they both do. It's not an easy question because I think they both, as Mr. Harding was talking about, both have really admirable qualities. And as I said, I taught both in both programs. They both are extremely rigorous. And I think with students, it's really about taking the most rigorous program at your particular school, whatever that is. That gives you the best chance to access a top tier university. But you do need to really set yourself apart in many other ways. And I think, as I mentioned before, leadership is one of those ways. So it's really not so much about the program. The program is there. Everybody, it's kind of levels the field in a sense. But you've got to do some other things as well as excel at school.
And Miss Stuckey, you're very quiet over there. We do have a question for you. Will ICS curriculum, the AP, be acceptable in any colleges once our children have completed high school at ICS? Especially now that we have also changed to the standards-based grading system.
Thank you for that question. I think Mr. Lau did a great job of explaining earlier how your child can apply to different universities around the world using our AP curriculum. So that definitely isn't an issue. In terms of standards-based grading, that's really a philosophy in how we approach teaching and learning. And so it's an idea about thinking that we focus on students' proficiency on the standards, and we look at growth. We want to develop student ownership, provide more opportunities for targeted instruction, things like reteaching and extension. And so these types of ideas will guide what we do in the classroom. And so it doesn't actually have an effect in terms of the curriculum, but it's going to hopefully help. That the idea is that it would help students to be more successful in their classes now, and then develop those skills, like I'd mentioned about ownership, to be successful when they're on their own in university. And actually standards-based assessment is actually more similar to the IB grading system. So the IB grading system uses a criteria-based grading system, and it has a scale that's more similar to standards-based, rather than the traditional grading system that you might be used to, which is on a 100-point grading scale. So we really believe that standards-based is going to be beneficial to the students. In terms of universities, universities are very adept at looking at transcripts and being able to understand different types of grading scales. Along with the transcripts, we will send the high school profile to universities. So they'll be able to reference that to be able to have a better understanding of what our grading scale is and how they can interpret it on the transcript. Mr. Lau is also really helpful in reaching out to universities and talking to them and letting them know, hey, this is how our school works, and helping to kind of maybe fill in some of those gaps where they might have questions.
And we have one last question directed to Mr. Lau, but if any one of you have any experience or knowledge to share about it, please go ahead. Mr. Lau, how important is it that the college counselor how important is the college counselor in getting students into school of their choice?
Oh, fun question. I think the position that I'm in, to be able to support students in their college application process, is just that. I'm here to support them and journey with them through that process to help them find not only the information that they need, but to also help them stay on track. The student themselves are the ones that are studying in high school. They're the ones that will do what they need to do to choose rigorous courses, so the AP courses, to do the research on their own as well, to find out what is needed for their courses they want to study in university, and begin to plan their own course of action for high school. I'm here to be able to help them in that as well. So when they come prepared to a meeting with their research, I'm able to give them advice, encourage them, motivate them as well. I'm able to do research too, but it's a teamwork effort. At the end of the day, the student is the one that is applying to that college. I am not. What I can do is I can vouch for the students in my letter of recommendation, speaking to college representatives and explaining different extraordinary situations the student may have been in, or just explaining circumstances that is more specific to ICS. And so I'm there to be an advocate for them in their application process. But at the end of the day, it's the student who will get themselves into that college that they want to go to.
Thank you so much. Does anybody else want to chime in?
Yes, Ms. Go, I would like to chime in because I think Mr. Lau is being incredibly humble. I've worked in many schools around Asia, and the college counselor is extremely important. Yes, it is the student's job to get the grades and complete the work and to find innovative service learning opportunities. But if they're not guided for success, if in grade 9, when they are still a bit immature and wet behind the ears, they don't have the understanding and knowledge of where they might want to be in 4 years' time, they won't be set up for success. And that is extremely important that we have a college counselor that's so well versed across I think he listed off 8 or 10 different countries there. So that's extremely, extremely important. I think that can't be understated. I would also like to just make one comment to the standards-based grading system that was asked. You'll remember in my presentation, I said, AP schools there's a flexibility that's there, and sometimes the rigor can be lost. One of the things that standards-based grading and standards-based teaching and learning does is it ensures that the rigor is there, because we hold ourselves accountable to standards that are high in terms of educational best practice research and what universities need students to be able to know and do upon entry. So I think that was a great question. And I think standards-based grading is only going to help our students and help our school.
Thank you so much for your active participation in this event. Now, if you have any further questions that we did not get a chance to answer, please stay just for a moment as I welcome back Dr. Rader to close us out and share some next steps. Dr. Rader?
All right, I want to thank our speakers today for their outstanding presentations and for answering our parent questions this evening. And thank you, parents and guardians, for joining us. I hope these presentations were helpful in understanding more thoroughly the AP program here at ICS and how it compares to the IB programs offered in Singapore, as well as how your child can be prepared for life after high school here at ICS. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact any of the speakers at our email addresses. We want to hear from you and are more than happy to connect beyond this event. We hope you have a great rest of the evening and look forward to a relaxing holiday season ahead. Thank you so much for being with us. Good night.